sinners, and saints. Dust off those horns and halos. It's time for Alley After Dark.
Fear. It's one of those little four-letter words that has a really big meaning. It can have a really broad definition or a very narrow definition depending upon each one of us and what we're afraid of, what causes fear. Certain politicians try to use fear to scare you into voting for them. Usually their fear-mongering is based on lies, and you have to see through that, but still, that's what they do. They think that fear is a bigger motivator than other positive aspects of political life. But what are we afraid of? What constitutes fear for each of us? I think we're going to talk about fear in the spirit of Halloween, maybe a little tongue-in-cheek as well, or tongue between butt cheeks, holla, whatever gets us through the day, right? Whew, yeah, snacks are always beneficial and comforting. And when we're talking about fear, comfort food, butt munching, that could be a relaxing activity after this episode is concluded. I think we're going to start this episode with probably the most terrifying issue that I can think of, and it will probably be the most controversial of all that we talk about tonight. Now, brace yourselves when I tell you what topic we're going to start with. Okay. Oh man, I'm getting the shakes just even thinking about it before I even tell you guys what we're going to talk about. But here goes. Our first topic in relation to fear is body odor.
What?
Ugh. Oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
Calm down, everybody. Calm down. Easy, easy, easy. It's not going to be that bad. I promise. If you need to take your nerve pill, take it right now. But we'll get through this and then we'll get on to other topics of fear. Okay? And I know you're wondering right now, why is Alan bringing this up? Well, the subject came up in a discussion, in particular on social media. And I think you all know that there is a group of gay men, maybe it's not just gay men, maybe it's just a group of people that like body odor. Now, true confession here, I don't mind a guy being sweaty and hot and a little bit ripe, but if you're smelling like the ass end of a dead skunk, I'm not so pleased with that. I don't like that body funk. I don't like that sleep stank, but there are men that do, and that's all well and good. I guess I wonder where that line is. How do you measure? Is there a line that someone can cross that would make a person who's into that say, hell no? I myself, I don't want someone covered in cologne, perfume, or a really heavily scented body wash. Honestly, good old Dial antibacterial soap, a nice clean soap smell, perfect. Ooh la la, smack my bitch up. That makes me happy. I enjoy that very much. I don't need you to have deodorant on. I can handle a little bit of that. And to be honest, if I'm going to be licking your armpits, I don't want aluminum-coated tongue afterwards. I want to get to the real you, but you don't have to smell like a cesspool either. You think I'm going to let you come in here and land on my sheets when you have a smell that could gag a maggot? Jesus. Now, I know I sound like I'm judging on that, but I really am not. I'm just curious as to what the threshold is. Where is the line? How far do you go? Is that the gist of it? I've seen the golden shower videos and I've experienced a little bit of that. But do you get into a guy that smells like 6-day-old piss on a pair of dirty underwear? Honestly, I'm just curious. I know that there's that place in a certain city where that incident happened where the guy was in the trough and he wanted everybody to pee on him. And, well, hell's bells. If you gotta go, you gotta go, right? But how does that work on the gag reflex? A piss smell that permeates through the clothes, into the pores. I don't know. Do I mind watching golden showers? Not at all. But I guess I'm thinking that we always talk about men being visual when it comes to sex. And it's true. We like looking at porn, we like watching. But what about the smell of sex? What's the level there? And, I can always flash back to that bisexual three-way when the husband moved my head toward his wife's cooch and I threw up off the side of the bed. There was nothing wrong with that cooch. It was fine. There was no tuna smell or nothing like that, but it was cooch. So it wasn't, I guess it was the visual along with the cooch smell, which I know heterosexual men get fired up over that. But us pole smokers, I have to beg your pardon, it's not a rose garden. Personally, I do have a phobia about how I smell. If someone was to tell me that I smell bad, I would run back to the house, I would take a shower, I would do whatever it took to make sure that I didn't smell that way anymore. I would just have to wonder why I would ever be out where I smelled bad, because I don't really do that. I guess if someone's saying that I smell bad, they just don't like me, do they? Well, hell, you could just say you don't like me, but I guess telling me that I stink gets under my skin better than saying you don't like me. So, more power to you on that one. I just would have to question it since I know that I smell like Dial soap. Maybe you hate that smell. Maybe that's what you would be hating, is that smell. Can't please everybody, right? Not even a two-bit podcaster talking about the misadventures of his life out here in the Bible Belt, right? Right. I believe it was Franklin Roosevelt who said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." But I wonder how he would feel about that if you were a gay man coming out of the closet and you had haters coming after you. We all have haters for one reason or another. The only time that I have felt fear were times when I was alone coming out of the club, and you would get that sense that people that were approaching in a car were bashers, and it would always be 4, 5, 6 or more against one. And that fear is a necessary fear to protect yourself. One of the things to do would be never go out by yourself. But you know what? You should be able to walk the streets. You should be able to leave a nightclub and go to your car and not worry about getting attacked, beaten up, killed because of who you are or because of where you were having fun. I don't know how they can just make, well, they don't have to, I guess. They just assume that if you're going to a gay bar, that you have to be either a gay person or a supporter, and they don't differentiate from the two. But isn't it just really something how they have to work in a pack, a herd mentality, because that's what reinforces their so-called, well, their hatred, their bigotry. One-on-one, they can't really defend themselves either physically or metaphysically. They can't make a rational argument as to why they hate somebody enough to hurt them. But in that instance, your instincts, that fear can potentially save your life. And the same thing goes for women and girls. I know, we all have the right to go anywhere we want to by ourselves or with friends, and we should be safe. We should be free to do that and not worry. But we all know that's not the world we live in. Maybe I'm using the word fear incorrectly here, but to me, there's always that tinge of fear that leads to caution, and we all should be cautious. We have to be cautious. So the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Yes, the fear can cause us to make even worse mistakes, overreactions, underreactions. We have to be able to think it through and be prepared for a situation that could get out of control, but try not to let that fear freeze us keep us from taking action. And I am preaching to myself right here too. Boys and girls, sinners and saints, bitches and taints. We all need to keep that in mind in situations. You know, I've mentioned it before. I've mentioned it several times. When you meet someone and that little voice inside your head says, there's something not right here, I think you should believe it. I think we do have natural instincts that can give us the heads up that something just isn't quite right. If that's fear, to me, sometimes I would consider that positive fear. Being cautious, being aware of your surroundings can keep you alive and will protect you so that you aren't paralyzed in fear or put in harm's way. You can call me a hypocrite for saying it like that, but that stems from my own family, my baby nieces and nephews. I worry about them in schools. I worry about school shootings. I worry about them, the stranger danger. I'm worried about them being kidnapped by some monster. You worry about them being on a school bus. I mean, there's so many things like that that you worry about, which is fear. I fear for their safety. There's only so much you can do. It doesn't stop you from being afraid. Barely a month ago, one of my best friends died from cancer. He had said that he had lived a full life and he was okay with the circumstances that he was in. Not only does it hurt that I've lost a good friend and I miss him, but it once again reminds you of your mortality and your vulnerability as you get older. I know I've spoken on this a few times, and I wanted this to be a little bit more lighthearted for Halloween, but I got to be honest about it. When we're young, our parents worry about us because we're vulnerable as children, but as you get older, you start feeling that vulnerability again. You're not as quick as you used to be. Your reactionary times, your reflexes aren't as strong as they were when you were in your 20s. The world puts more pressure on you as you get older. The fear of being in bad health, the fear of not being able to take care of yourself, running out of money. Those things are my greatest fears over almost everything else as I get older, and I'm a single person. My friend was really lucky that he had a really close couple of people who were there to the very end. All of us were there for support, but he did have a core group of people that took care of him. And I think for me, I wonder, and I've said it before, I know, will I have the same outcome? Will I have people that will help if I need that kind of help? And we never know that. We never know. I find myself being more on guard when I walk through a parking lot if it's dark. I take additional precautions solely because of my age and sometimes doubting my abilities or capabilities, if you will, if something arose like an attempted mugging or something. I consider those things and use my vulnerabilities at my age as a factor, even though I'm in very good health. I'm physically active. I can take care of myself, but it doesn't stop me from always thinking about it in the back of my mind that I need to be wary of people and be cautious just because I'm not as quick as I used to be, as reflexive as I used to be. I actually feel awkward. It bothers me that I am sort of thinking in the way that I never wanted to think. But maybe that's just a natural inclination as we get older, that it's just a natural progression that we recognize in ourselves our vulnerabilities, and that instills that fear of not being in control, which is probably my number one fear for myself that there is. The thought of not being able to take care of myself truly does frighten me. Maybe the better quote for this episode would have been Sophia Petrillo from the Golden Girls. You got nothing to fear but fear itself. And of course, the boogeyman. And the reason why I would choose that over the Franklin Roosevelt quote is because, yeah, it's a big, bad, dangerous world out there, but that doesn't mean that all these big, badass men that know kung fu and can shoot 5,000 guns and all that are totally immune to danger. Sometimes their arrogance can get them in more trouble than us cautionary people. I think about just times during the COVID pandemic when we were all basically stuck at home. I discovered an app called Randonautica. I don't know if you've all ever heard of it, but it's an app that is sort of like a geolocator, but you are supposed to dwell on a certain thought in your mind. And Randonautica generates coordinates that will reflect on what you are thinking about. And it really is like an attractor of strange things. You will wind up going to mostly just locations that have no bearing on anything that you were thinking about. But sometimes you do go to places that sort of do fit what you're thinking about. And I have to say that I had a couple of frightening experiences with this app. The first time I tried it, I thought, well, there was the story of those kids in Seattle that their focus was death, and the app took them to a location and they actually found a cut up dead body in suitcases. And that led to the legend of Randonautica, and it got so much viral coverage on social media that it gained quickly in popularity. And it was something you can do without being exposed to other people's germs. You could do it with your friends that you were isolating with, or you could do it by yourself, which is what I did. The stories I'd heard about the weirdness of it intrigued me enough for me to try it. So I am in the safety of my locked car during a worldwide pandemic using Randonautica to find these locations that it generates and see if it does fit what I am thinking about. Well, I was really just looking for weird things, and the first 3 or 4 times on this one focal point, nothing really stood out. I mean, there were some unusual things that kind of fit what I was thinking on. And so in frustration, I thought, well, let me just do what they did. Let me make the focus be death. And it generated the point for me to go to. And I thought, well, I know where this is. This is a gated community. I can't even get into that community to get to the specific point. But I thought, well, hell, I'll go anyway. So I pull into the turn lane. And as I get to the turn lane where the entrance to that community is, the gates were open. And at the point that I was geolocating, there was an ambulance and a fire truck there, and they were bringing out someone on a gurney. And I thought, wow, that's kind of odd, isn't it? And I thought, I wonder if these big badass guys do this, because there's several YouTube channels where these guys are doing Randonautica, but I know that they are scripting the incidents. They are creating the drama. They've set the stage for their video. It's not really random for them. They're actually just playing this game with their audience as if it's real when they've staged the whole thing. But I know that it took me in locations that I was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. I don't want to be caught on some of these weird back roads where you might have people that should have starred in Deliverance. But I always wonder if those that are big badasses who think that they can beat up anybody, do they ever, if they're smart and they're wise about their behavior, they have fear as well. They know that something could go wrong. Someone could have a knife. Someone could stab you in the back. Someone could shoot you from a distance. You're not always able to defend yourself as portrayed in many movies. And in this day and age, all these people wanting to be social media influencers who are taking all these risks for clicks and followers. I've heard that there were so many that went to the hurricane zones to ride out the hurricanes just to get clicks on a social media platform. I mean, seriously, guys, are you really sure that your life is worth that kind of a risk? And like with Randonautica and some of these YouTube channels, if they aren't staging it all, they're actually trespassing on people's property in some cases, and they are putting themselves at risk just to get more attention. I guess if the thirst for stardom can overrule your fears, that's one thing. You could be famous, but you could still be dead. And I think that's what the Sophia Petrillo quote is all about. It's like, there are things beyond our control, so don't risk tangling with those things if you can avoid it. Lord Jesus, I know that I was talking about Randonautica, and Randonautica is sort of the premier app for quantum randomness. So I guess in thinking about the way this episode has turned out, it couldn't be much more random and out of whack than it is, could it? Jesus. Won't you all be glad when I'm back to talking about dick all the time? Thank you for joining me for this not so Halloween episode. I hope you've had a good time. Not too freaked out. Not too pissed off at the randomness. Remember, take life by the balls and be real. We'll see you soon.